Hello, you're listening to a We Will Fix It podcast short with Colin Thomas and myself, James Pikeaway.
Oh yes, I remember the bodge.
So I am certain that I get this putty. You get it, comes in two little strands. You mix it together. It works. I see it on the package. It works underwater, works in water, works around water.
Yeah, it does.
And it gets nice. For a temporary fix, don't you think it would work?
No. In fact, I know it wouldn't work because we have had to come to replace these tanks when that bodge has been attempted. And excuse me, I kind of had this failure on my tank, so I used some of that putty, and now I have a waterfall. What next? Great. Good news is we normally can get tanks within 24 hours, so we can move really quickly. So.
Okay, so here's the other.
So basically, nothing really sticks very well to that plastic. Also, you think about the location of where your failure is. It's right at the bottom of the tank.
It's kind of bulging a little bit there too.
Pressure point. Yeah. You've got all that pressure of water. Yeah. So at the bottom, have got an absolute nightmare. At the top, you've got probably a good 10% chance, which is way more than at the bottom. Okay,
but I like that stuff. I just think it sells a dream.
Okay, so then let's see if we can get from 10% at the top of the tank to 10% at the bottom of the tank. Yeah. Okay, so the only potential way that I'd even consider doing that would be to actually fix it on the inside of the tank, not the outside of the tank, so that we've got the pressure that's pushing it into the error. Yeah. In which case, you're draining your tank anyway. By the way, if they give you 24 hours notice, you can isolate that tank, so that way you actually get to use the water instead of just waste it.
So here's the problem.
They give you they just turn up and wait there, don't they?
So the guy who realized we're not bodging this job, it's not going to work.
Yep.
And so I said, here's the problem. I'm going to have to water this grass. And he says, oh, well, we can isolate the tank. So we go up on the roof and look. There's no isolation valve, and there's no isolation valve downstairs.
That's okay. There's loads of ways around that.
Oh,
you'll have a float valve in it, don't you?
Yeah.
So just yank up the float valve and literally tie it off with a piece of string. Job done.
Okay, that's it. Yeah. Oh, well, I figured that's what I would do anyway.
Well, also, if you imagine, to be able to replace it, he's got to isolate it anyway. Yeah. So he'd probably isolate it at the DEWA valve. Yeah. In which case, why wouldn't you do that now?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So there's lots of options. That's always doable. Yeah. Now. The good news is, because you do water your grass manually, were it to come to it when they forget, because they will, when they come with the tank, they've got the initial process of getting the tank on the roof. At that point, you could be watering like you've never watered before.
Exactly.
To get rid of all of that water onto your garden. So that can work. Next thing, size of the tank. Roughly your height or more?
It's just a little bit taller than me.
Okay. Is it portrait or is it landscape?
Portrait.
Okay, so in which case you're talking probably, that's a big tank.
That's a giant tank.
So I think it's probably by like maybe a 600 to 800 gallon tank. So that's a big beast. Now that is slightly bigger. We would normally rope up a 500 gallon maximum onto a roof, and that's doable. But then again, we would do that with 4 guys. Right. If 5 guys, the best burgers in the world.
Murdiff City Centre, if you're in Dubai, and all over the United States of America, where we've got some great
we've got one in downtown as well.
You got one in downtown?
Yeah, 5 guys, the best burgers in the world.
And fries are good too.
The fries are excellent.
We are more than open to in podcast sponsorship, by the way. And
I don't know how people would get that idea, James.
The 5 guys and SpeedX and
Ace Hardware
are all going to say, but you're already giving it to us for free. Why would we spend any money?
Oh no, we're just demonstrating. This is a one-off. We don't normally do this.
That's right.
So on that basis, you want some more of this. You've got to get in touch. Right. Where were we? Oh, yes. So with 5 guys, the best burgers in the world, in the van, they may well be able to lift it. But it will be, you won't want to watch. You won't want to be stood underneath.
So, I mean, are they going to rope it up onto the roof? Is that...
That sounds like this might be the route that they're planning.
Okay.
Well, the way we would do it, in all honesty, is a crane. And you can't do a crane off a vehicle. You need a specialist crane which is about 900 dirhams in itself to do that.
So they probably won't do that, but they easily could, because I've got a wall right beside my villa, which happens to be where it's hard packed and people drive up and down an alleyway. So easily a crane could just back in, put it on the top, lift it to the roof. Hey, Bob's your uncle.
Well, we found that basically the crane prices seem to be the same no matter what size crane you get.
Okay.
So we ordered the biggest thing that can basically lift swimming pools and
That'd be awesome.
multiple buildings.
I wonder if they'd let me use it.
So
just for some fun.
Oddly enough, I don't think they would. I've got no idea why, James. We have to have all sorts of liability insurance and this kind of stuff just to physically get one into a development, which we do on a frequent basis. But yeah, so for that, we would crane it. The other problem with the vertical rather than the horizontal is it's much more difficult to rope.
Right.
In terms of the physical getting hold of the darn thing is a pain in the neck. So there are many issues in that process. I'm not saying it's not doable.
Yeah.
We just prefer a slightly easier and safer route on the whole to getting it done.
I mean, I know that they're, because of the measurements they've taken, and that their goal is to replace it with like, but they could easily put a landscape version in. Like, I don't see why it changes anything.
It'll be so underneath the tank. Normally, you'll have a base.
It is on a base,
right?
That is
and
made
that
for
base size is really what determines it on the whole.
Okay. So
when you start having to create extensions to bases, it all gets a little bit.
They're not going to do
spooky.
that. Yeah, no, there is a base, so they'll do like.
Yeah, that sounds logical. But again, an 800-gallon tank is huge.
It's big.
So, but however, it depends. When you're watering the garden, I wonder how quickly you run down that tank.
I have 2 tanks, so I run down I've got a tank on the ground floor and one up above.
So that ground floor one is pushing to the roof one, and therefore it's only which of those tanks is the smallest versus
the same size.
Yeah. But if you imagine, then you've got the pump rate that is going.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to test that out. I'm going to rope up the float valve and see how much water comes out, because
you're actually in a better position than most, because in effect you would need to get through the one on the roof and at least 1.5 of the one on the ground before you would run out of water normally. Because yours is pumped, so therefore it has better pressure and will be a quicker fill of the one on your roof than a standard underground tank. Equally, the one on the ground floor will be filled by DEWA, so it will have less pressure than the one on the roof. Anyway, so but you'll do just fine. Yeah. But the point being, you could definitely survive a 600-gallon, 500-gallon tank without any problems whatsoever.
Well, we'll see what happens. I will keep you informed.